As you know, comic book films are in extreme popularity at the moment. Despite their quality, most of them are money making juggernauts. Several of these films release in a year and sweep the box office with no effort, but no one talks about the true source of inspiration for these films: comic books. I'm not the biggest comic book fan, mind you. As you know, I am more of a film guy. But the art form of comics is truly an underrated one. Comic books are more similar to television series rather than a film. Both mediums are storytelling mediums, but their approach to it is where they differ. I'm not saying that one is better than the other, just that they are different. A conventional film is tied down to a runtime, mostly about 2 to 2.5 hours, sometimes 3. Unless you're Zack Snyder and have the cojones to make a 4-hour comic book film, which is not quite common. They have to introduce the characters and make the audience go through their journey within a limited runtime. Meanwhile, in a comic book, it is a more serialized long form storytelling medium, which is why I said it's more in line with TV shows. Having been able to create multiple issues for a comic book allows the writer to have a lot of time with these characters and their journeys. They can use this time to build on these characters and the mythology. Compared to cinematic storytelling, it has its advantages. 3 to 4 hour comic book films can help flesh out characters and mythologies, but they're risky from a business perspective, as the audience is more likely to watch a 2-hour film compared to a 4-hour one. This really depends on what you are a fan of, which storytelling medium. Now that I've talked about both of them, let's see how Marvel and DC tackles them. Marvel. Marvel, in its initial stages, had a great, never before done idea. Introduced several of these larger than life icons on the big screen, together establishing themselves in the same universe. This was done in the comic, sure, but the film had its limitations due to all of these characters being distributed amongst various companies. So, Marvel worked with their limitations to bring out some of the B tier characters to shine. Everyone at that time knew Spider Man, but not many knew Iron Man or Thor. So, Marvel created some solid solo films introducing these characters and making us care for them. Then, they made the Avengers, and the rest was history. This was a great idea and executed brilliantly. But it became stale. Other companies attempted to replicate Marvel's success but failed, but now the shared universe approach feels like an overdone formula. To me, most of Marvel's projects now are focused more on connecting it with the overall universe rather than them being good individual stories. They're not terrible, just passable. A lot of the times, many character moments and motivations are lost in between the films. In a comic, let's say, each character has their own run in which their backstory, motivation, and relationships are fleshed out. So, what can films do to combat this? Shows. Disney Plus is not only genius because we get more Marvel content, it is genius because we get way more time with these heroes and flesh them out as flawed people. I now care more about Wanda, Vision, Falcon, and Bucky. Getting a couple more hours can be an advantage, and as I said, long form storytelling is beneficial. And also, Marvel's doing a good job with these shows, doing new and fresh shows along with some bold and unique filmmaking choices. I'm not that excited for a lot of the shows because they don't interest me as much, but Loki I am extremely excited for it because it looks extremely bonkers. So, Marvel is able to adapt cinematic into comic book storytelling successfully, and I cannot wait. DC. DC has gone down a completely different path. So I'm mainly going to be talking about the DCEU here, right? So the DC universe began with Man of Steel, which is a smart move because he is one of, if not the most recognizable superheroes ever. I used to think that this movie was mediocre, but now I've grown to somewhat like it. Then instead of going the Marvel route and making solo films, we immediately get Batman v Superman, another film I've grown to sort of appreciate. Snyder could have done it safe, but no. He did what he thought was right for his universe, and that is admirable. Also, I think having another superhero universe with so many films could have been overwhelming. Thankfully, it's doing the opposite of Marvel. But I've said this a million times. How does this fit into comic book storytelling format? DC handles this differently. DC at the moment doesn't have shows. I'm talking about the DCEU here. Critically, the DCEU had a rocky start. But then, after Wonder Woman, there was some hope. Marvel's flaw was that most of their films felt like a product rather than a passion project. But DC did the opposite. Instead of focusing on connecting the films to the overall universe, they made director driven films. The DCEU was doing really well, and then came Joker. DC was making films set in their universe, but then came this indie Scorsese style DC film separate from the main continuity, and I loved it. I was now a fan. It felt fresh, like one vision, and it was cinema. We now know that not everything has to be connected. Now we have films such as The Suicide Squad, The Batman, etc. They're more story driven, comic book wise. It's reminiscent of individual runs of characters where they're the focus. As a Batman comic book and a Superman comic book might look and feel very different because they're written and drawn by different creators, yet we can still believe that they're in the same universe. And sometimes you can have issues of, let's say, two Batmen that live in two different universes in comic books. And this is happening in DC films. We can have Ben Affleck's Batman and Robert Pattinson's Batman without getting confused. And I love that. Marvel follows comic book storytelling through the use of long form, whereas DC uses comic book storytelling by making films that feel very distinct from each other. I know that this might seem a little overwhelming to you, but I've been reading a lot of comics lately and it got me wondering. I hope this video is a start of a discussion regarding adapting comic books onto the big screen and what works and what doesn't. To me, this was an interesting thought. I really mean this. Comment below your thoughts. It is a great place for discussion, which I wish to do here. That's all I got for this. That's all I got for today. I'm sorry, I'm a little sick, and I hope you like this video and keep reading comic books because they're cool. I got nothing much to say, and until next time, I'll see you later.